How do we expect, or why do we expect Egypt to cede the Sinai Peninsula to a new Palestinian state?
Well, before I answer about Egypt, I want to broaden a bit the question and talk about the region overall. For the first time in the history of Israel, Israel and the Sunni Arab world have common interests. The common interest we have with the Sunni Arab world is the fight against Iran. The Sunni Arab world have realized that the only state they can rely on in their fight against Iran is the state of Israel. Why did they come to this conclusion? Because during Obama administration, Obama from day one decided to do something which was pretty amazing. He left an alliance that started in 1931 with the Sunni Arab world and decided to side with Iran. Why did he do so? Why could he do so? Because the United States is not dependent of oil anymore. The United States is an exporter of oil now. The country doesn't need the Arab world oil, and therefore President Obama had other considerations and he wanted to side with the Iranians. And I must tell you that the Sunni Arab world was in a state of shock from this event. And in these 8 years, they saw something that was remarkable. They saw Israel standing, and I'm talking mainly about Prime Minister Netanyahu, standing in front of the President of the United States and saying, Mr. President, you are wrong, Iran is the real enemy. And for 8 years, Israel didn't change its mind. And the Arabs are not forgetting it. And they're saying, for the first time in history, we are relying on Israel. We want to be close to Israel. In this context, what happened with the Palestinians is that while the Palestinians for a long time were an asset for the Arabs in their fight to delegitimize Israel, suddenly there is a new world where the Palestinians are no more an asset, but they are a liability for the Arab world on their way to make peace with Israel. And they want this problem out of the table. It's a completely new world. We wouldn't be standing here talking about the new state solution if these changes wouldn't have occurred. We're living in a different era completely. Egypt. Egypt is facing huge problems. There are 100 million people in Egypt. 30 million of them are starving. There is no food in Egypt. There are protests every day against President Sisi. People have nothing to eat. Furthermore, Egypt is facing a grave situation concerning security. It practically pretty much lost the Sinai Peninsula. The Sinai Peninsula today is controlled more by ISIS, especially in this northern part we're talking about. And the Egyptians have also huge problems with the Muslim Brotherhood. 30% of the Egyptians support the Muslim Brotherhood. The Muslim Brotherhood is like Hamas. It's a jihadist organization. Egypt used to be the leader of the Arab world. They are not leading anymore. President Trump, when he came to the Middle East, chose to go to Saudi Arabia, not to Egypt. This is very bad news for the Egyptians. The new state solution adheres and gives a solution exactly to these problems. It enables the Egyptians to lead again. It enables them to become the center of global attention. It enables them to get a huge amount of money to solve their problem and also solve the security issues. So they have a lot to gain. And all we are asking from the Egyptians in return, don't even give, lease 10%, not of mainland Egypt, but of the Sinai Peninsula, an area that has never been really a part of mainland Egypt, to save your own people, the Palestinian people.
So the inducement for Egypt is threefold, as the general said, and then just to give you a bit of an idea of what I'm going to do, I'm going to do everything I can not to leave any questions. There are a number of duplicate questions. A number of you share similar concerns and so forth, so I'm going to just take the ones that are unique. So remember about Egypt, the inducement is threefold. Security, as the general said, they have a security issue. It is overlooked. It is very serious. The terror organizations see Egypt as the soft target, not Israel. 2, economic. They have a terrible, dire economic situation and a restive, underemployed young population between the age of 18 and 35. You should know that in the Middle East, that specific demographic has shown its leaders and its autocrats of late that if they do not feed them, those autocrats will likely find themselves being overturned. Sisi is in no small part a product of that. And number 3, to be astride the world stage, at the center of that stage again. Now, the next question that I want to go to is, what about Jerusalem?
Well, first of all, I think it goes without saying that if we establish a state in Gaza and the northern Sinai Peninsula, the capital of the Palestinian people will be within the state they will have. So they will need to decide which city they want to be a capital or build a new city. Regarding Jerusalem, first of all, of course, it's the heart of the Jewish people, and it's important for all Jews, Muslims, and Christians alike. And I think it's Israel's responsibility, and it's doing so, to make sure that Jerusalem will always be open for everybody. We have an agreement with the Jordanians, not the Palestinians, regarding Temple Mount, and we will maintain this agreement that Jerusalem will always be open for Muslims and Christians and Jews alike. Now, I talked about the situation in the Middle East, and I wanted to say something about the Christians. The Christian population in the Middle East is being exterminated. They are being burned alive, crucified, decapitated, and banished from every state and state, including the Palestinian Authority. When I was 17 years old, as I said to you, I studied in a British high school, and at the age of 17, I brought some of my friends to Israel, and we went and visited Bethlehem. At the time, there were 90% Christians and 10% Muslims in the city. Later on, we gave the city to the Palestinian Authority, and guess what? Today, 90% Muslims and 10% Christians. We think that within 10 years, there won't be even one Christian in Bethlehem. So, if I was Christian, and Europe and the United States and South America, Christians countries, I will never allow the Palestinians to rule the holy sites. It's only for Israel to make sure that Jerusalem is open for everybody.
So the issue of Jerusalem actually lobs at nicely the next question. I should make a couple of points very clear. This whole plan is predicated on the idea of not downgrading anything that the Palestinian Arabs currently have. I want to repeat that. We will not downgrade anything that the Palestinian Arabs currently have. The only thing we will do is significantly upgrade it. So Jerusalem is an example of that. Jerusalem will remain exactly the agreement as the general said and described. They will have a state, however. Within that state, it will be entirely up to them to designate their capital city. Currently, they don't have that option. This would grant them that option. They would no longer be a people who are stateless. Now, the other thing that I have been asked here by way of these questions is, what about the Palestinian Arabs in the West Bank? Given that we will not engage in the forced transfer of any people, what will be the fate of the Palestinian Arabs in Judea and Samaria?
Well, the big issue about the Palestinians in Judea and Samaria, and this is what many people in Israel talk about, if we want a Jewish state, we can't have 2 million more Palestinians gaining Israeli citizenship. This is really the issue. The issue is not the fact that they are living there. It's the fact that if we apply the Israeli law in Judea and Samaria, if there is no Palestinian state, at a certain point, people say, we'll have to give them citizenship. And I think in Israel, everybody agrees. I would say 99% of the people and the parties in the Knesset and so on agree that this is not a good idea. The new state solution solves this problem, because by creating a state for the Palestinians, we are able to grant Palestinian citizenship to the Palestinians who live in Judea and Samaria, and at the same time grant them Israeli residency. So they can live in Israel, they can thrive, they can enjoy, and they want to, by the way, enjoy the $40,000 GDP of the state of Israel. Most of them, by the way, work in Israel anyway today. This is one ecosystem. Look how small it is. It's one ecosystem. The electricity is Israel, water is Israel, roads. They are completely dependent on Israel anyway. They want to be part of this ecosystem. Most of them, by the way, are really fed up with the Palestinian Authority. It's a horrible organization, corrupt, and doesn't really take care of them. They see, on the other hand, the Israeli Arabs thriving, succeeding. And you want a proof of that? It's very simple. If you find me one Israeli Arab, one, who is willing to move from Israel to the Palestinian Authority, I will happily donate my military pension to this person who finds one Israeli Arab. They want to be like them. They want to enjoy all Israel has to give, but they also want to be citizens of a Palestinian state. They want to have a state. Looking at Europe, for example, you can be an Italian who decides to go and live all your life in Germany. You can do that. You will be a resident in Germany for all your life, but when there are elections, you will choose in Italy. So this is basically what we are suggesting. We have talked about it with the leading specialist talking about international law about it, and there is no problem. Really.
Yeah, apparently, and neither of us purports to be an international lawyer or an expert, but we do engage in consultations with the appropriate experts on all of this. And of course, once a state is ratified by either the people or by leadership, many of these issues disappear. Right? The Palestinian people are no longer stateless. And that is a tremendous upgrade compared to what they currently have. Perhaps imperfect, but infinitely preferable to being stateless, as they put it. Now, the next question has been asked, if the Palestinian Arabs want to return to the homes that they lost, what makes anybody think that Palestinian Arabs would leave the West Bank? I'd actually like to run through it myself, if I may, General, on this one. This is a very, very dangerous mindset for people to enter into. I want to try and humanize it, and then I'll draw back and look at it from a statistical point of view. First of all, I'm one of 7 children. Okay, one of 7 children. Within my family, around the dinner table, my nuclear family, around the dinner table, we have 4 who moved to the State of Israel and served in the Israel Defense Forces. We have members of my family who moved from the United Kingdom to the State of Israel and would never live outside Jerusalem and the surrounding areas. We have members of my family who moved to the State of Israel and would never live outside of Tel Aviv and the surrounding areas. We have members of my family who pray from the United Kingdom 3 times daily to the direction of Jerusalem but would never move to Israel. And we have members of my family who live very close indeed to Jerusalem but actually pray on rather a less regular basis. And what I'm trying to express to all of you, and I believe you all know it, is that Jewish people on the issues of Israel and Jerusalem are not monolithic. They're simply not monolithic. People talk in these terms, but there is nothing to demonstrate the fact that we are monolithic. I think it's absurd and ridiculous. And when I hear people saying not a single Palestinian Arab would ever leave their homes, because it's absurd and ridiculous to suggest that the Palestinian Arabs are any more or less monolithic than are the Jewish people. And I think it's to deal in the soft bigotry of low expectations to suggest that only the Palestinian Arabs think one way and in one mindset and have one view about where it is that they live. Now that's the first thing. The second thing is the Palestinian Arabs demonstrate it by way of their own polls. 50% wish to leave the Gaza Strip, 35% wish to leave Judea and Samaria or the West Bank. I'm not for a moment saying they wish to move to the new state. What I am saying is that that speaks to the fact that contrary to what many people like to say, they are not religiously assigned to this land. Those who wish to stay in the land and are religiously assigned, they can stay. There will be a whole slew of others who wish to have a business in a new state, a stake in a new state, and the opportunity to build up a state in the image that they deem most expedient for their own people. And if you want to have an example of that to which you can cling, look at the lights here in Israel. Look how densely populated that country is. That country, that area that is illuminated 70 years ago, did not look like that. It looked like this. That was this 70 years ago. The story of how this country has become so illuminated is a story that we can talk about in the abstract, but we can also personalize. I am from the United Kingdom. Nobody transferred me out of the United Kingdom. I imagined a brighter future for myself in the State of Israel. The State of Israel directly funded my ability to move there. They gave me a stipend. It's called a sal klita. They gave me the opportunity to have more favorable mortgage rates, get a second degree free of charge, have a weekly income. It wasn't much, but it was enough to get myself started. And that story is not only my story. That is the story of millions and millions of Jewish people. If we bring about the standards that establish the State of Israel and apply those directly to the Palestinian Arabs, we actually believe that we can induce the voluntary movement with financial inducement to a new, brighter, better state. And if you want further proof of that, just consider that they are already in no small part on the move. And what they're seeking is jobs and financial opportunity. They're not moving to Chile because they are looking for Bethlehem. They're moving to Chile for other reasons. The next question that was asked was, absolutely brilliant. I like this one. Absolutely brilliant. What do Greenblatt and Kushner think about this? Okay. So do you want to take that one? The question is what essentially does the Trump administration think about this plan?
I think that one of the things that President Trump said from the beginning, we need to think out of the box. And this is thinking out of the box, it's thinking literally out of the box, the State of Israel, and finding solutions in a completely different way. I think they find it very interesting, and I think that if you follow Mr. Greenblatt's Twitter, in the last 6 months, all the administration has been talking about is Gaza, and also the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula. This is a huge change because till a year ago, everybody was neglecting completely the situation in Gaza and only talking about Judea and Samaria and trying to focus there. And President Trump said something which I think is right. He said, there is no solution without Gaza, and there is no solution without Gaza. This is half of the Palestinian people. So there is a change. We are really hoping that the administration will take this vision forward, and this will benefit Israel immensely.
There's a general question here. It says, David Ben-Gurion said that Israel is it is a miracle that the Jewish people live in Israel. We have to live from day to day. How true is that now? Are we on a day-to-day existence in Israel?
Well, first of all, Israel is a miracle every day. I think that Israel is very, very strong. Fortunately, I heard today people saying in Israel that, okay, we are very, very strong, so we can take big risks. And I don't think so. I think that we are strong and we have to remain strong. I think that today all the states in the world want to engage with us because of the economical strengths, because of the technology we are bringing to the world, because of the know-how. And this is what makes it an opportunity, because everywhere in the world, in the Arab world, in Europe, people are today more willing to listen. People are also more understanding of what's going on. In Europe, there is also terrorist attacks. Europe is suffering from mass immigration. And talking, by the way, about Egypt, I said there are 30 million people starving there to death, starving. They started embarking on boats on the way to Europe. And what we are saying to the Europeans, wake up. Let's deal with it now. And deal with it in a way that will bring peace to all the Middle East. And will isolate Iran. And save the Palestinians. And also prevent mass immigration from Egypt. And by the way, from Gaza as well. 70% of the Gazans wants to immigrate. To Europe. And they are all indoctrinized. Think about it. It's 70% people who are jihadists who, okay, now they are storming the Israeli border. It won't work. Israel can cope with it. And what happens when they turn the other side? And start storming the shores of Europe. It will happen, and the Europeans know it. So there's a very good chance for the first time to convince Europe, to convince the administration here in the United States, and to convince the Sunni Arab world that this is the right solution for this conflict.
The other question, I'm going to just refer back to the previous question before I come to the next. I'm going to try and wrap this into one answer. The question was asked, what does the administration think? The general alluded to parts of that. I want to try and put a bit of a sharper point on that, if I may. If you take a cursory glance at the media coverage of the Israel-Palestinian conflict of late and what's coming out of not just the White House, but also what's coming out of the Arab world, and you draw a line down the middle of a page and you line up how many of those articles have referred to a resolution in Judea and Samaria and how many of those articles have called for a resolution in the Gaza Strip, you will see very, very clearly that the center of gravity has shifted to the Gaza Strip. And this in no way, shape or form should be interpreted as the administration adopting this plan. I can tell you that this plan has been in front of the appropriate people. I'm not going to go into specifics about who that is or is not, but it has been in front of the appropriate people on more than one occasion in an enduring and continuous way. But the reason that the administration is looking for that is that this is actually viable. This is actually viable. This is a plan that is sufficiently attractive that if it is refused, it's clear who is the party of no. And if it is accepted, the states of Israel can actually live with it. The states of Israel should not be relegated to being the party of no. That attitude is becoming dominant, that Israel is the rejectionist party, and I think that we need to do a little bit better. The next thing that I will say is there support from Egypt? General, I'm going to take this one again, and then I'm going to ask us both to answer the final question. The whole issue of the Gaza Strip, again, I'm not at liberty, we are not at liberty to go into the full length of who it is that we're in touch with and who it is that we're not in touch with, but there's a reason that we're pushing this forward. And the whole issue of the Gaza Strip came about because Egypt has shown form for giving away problem areas. You may remember that Menachem Begin asked Egypt to take over custodianship of the Gaza Strip. They didn't want it. They were willing to cede it when it became problematic. There's also the issue of the two islands that maybe the general can weigh in on. But not only that, General Sisi actually spoke to the idea of establishing not a state, but a large, if you like, refugee camp for the Palestinian Arabs in the Sinai Peninsula. The reason it was rejected was because the Palestinians rejected it, and also it wasn't a full-fledged state. It was almost a stopgap for refugees, so termed, from the Palestinian Authority or from beyond the shores of the Middle East who wanted a place to be and to establish themselves. And the final question is there a Palestinian in the working group? I'm going to give you a direct answer on that. The answer to that is no. But I want to tell you who's in that, and then I'd like you to speak about who it is that stands behind as general, if you would. The working group just had the addition of Yaakov Perry come on board. Now, he's not the only expert at hand by any stretch of the imagination, but to put him into context, Yaakov Perry is a former minister for space and technology. He's of a left-of-centre party within the Israeli government, or was at the time. He's also the former head of the Shin Bet. I make mention of Yaakov Perry because he was deeply dedicated to the two-state solution for years. He's now stepped away from the two-state solution and has assigned the best of his talents to the new state solution. Now, why is that relevant to the question before the general speaks about who's in the group? It's relevant to the question because individuals such as Yaakov Perry, and indeed individuals such as General Avivi, they do not assign themselves to ideas requiring a partner without some level of confidence that the partner is out there on the other side. And people like Yaakov Perry have that confidence as a consequence of the fact that they are in direct communication with relevant leaders from within the Palestinian people. So there's reason to be optimistic with that. And if you follow us, you will see that we will start to bring experts from the Palestinian people over into our working group. General Avivi.
Well, in order to be efficient, we could have brought to our group tens of generals and others. We wanted a small group of people. We brought generals who are experts in their area, like General Dangot, who is expert on the Palestinian issue, or General Eli Ben Meir, who has prominent intelligence officers and is an expert on Egypt and the Palestinian Authority. We brought a general named Nehemiah Sokel, who is an expert in logistics and how to create the basic needs of the state, talking about how much money is needed and what infrastructure is needed in such a state, because at the end of the day, the more we go into it, the more we get asked the question, okay, what's the number? How much it will cost to bring about this solution? By the way, talking about numbers, the good thing we are seeing is that unlike the two-state solution, where governments keep pouring money into this solution, all this money is going to terror or to private bank accounts of leaders, in the new state solution, since we are talking about beautiful shores, which at the moment are not worth anything, but in the future will be worth a lot of money, we have a lot of interest from the private sector. People who look at this idea and say, we see business here, we want to invest in it. If we get the right guarantees from the government that they will secure the area. Now, it's important to say that what we intend to do, or what we suggest that should be done, is start building this state in the northern part of the Sinai Peninsula, enable the people of Gaza to go out and get jobs and start building their future. But all this building will be done with Egyptian supervision and the Western Wall supervision, and not under Hamas or the Palestinian Authority. Only when this will be built and will be stabilized, then it will be handed over to the right leader, Palestinian leader. We don't know who it will be in the future, it's hard to say. But we can assure that the money will go to the right place and will be used wisely. This is not the case talking about the two-state solution.